congratulations on your, they just got a great round of investments, which is perfect because they have a wonderful company. And Paul, thanks for coming out to Colorado. It's great to have you. I'm going to turn it over to the two of you now, and let's listen to a great session.
One, I want to thank John. I mean, it was 2 years ago that we started talking about what we really wanted to do with Burst at this very summit, and so it's been a good journey. We're able to kind of walk some of this together. And I want to thank you all for sitting in on the session, and it's really my pleasure. We're gonna focus this session not on BurstIQ. I'll give you like a 2-second overview of Burst here in just a little bit. We're really going to focus this session on what the United States Department of Commerce is doing around blockchain and innovation around blockchain. It's my pleasure here to introduce Paul Thanos, who is the Director of the Finance and Insurance Industry within the U.S. Department of Commerce, International Trade Administration. He leads the blockchain initiative and focus within the Department of Commerce and for Commerce. Also leads a delegation to the OECD, which is an organization in Europe focused on regulatory guidance and oversight, as well as regulatory guidance across a lot of industries, not just finance. Actually was one of the longest running regulatory bodies in the world, established after World War II to stabilize the financial industry in Europe. So Paul has been very active there and been very instrumental in the U.S. presence, as well as a number of other activities I'll let him talk about. So again, it's my pleasure to introduce Paul. He's going to talk a little bit about what commerce does.
Thank you, Frank. And it's also a great pleasure to be here back in Colorado. Being here all day and hearing the content during the morning and the afternoon session, it's really evident there is a great deal of innovation going on here in the Denver area in the state of Colorado in the blockchain space. So I'm just going to say a few words about the International Trade Administration, highlight some of the work we're doing on the issue of blockchain technology, and then Frank and I will do a little bit of a Q&A. So the International Trade Administration, where I work in Washington, D.C., it's a 2,000-person, approximately, global network. And the mission is as it states up there, to increase U.S. economic competitiveness, promote trade and investment, and ensuring fair compliance with our trade laws and agreements. And some of the things we do, we negotiate trade agreements, we advocate on behalf of U.S. companies who are competing for either licenses or projects in international markets. We organize trade shows or trade promotion, trade missions, and we also do a lot of analysis where we write and publish on different issues that impact economic and business concerns. And we're divided up into 3 units. I won't go into all of it, but it's 3 units. One, global markets, which is regionally focused, and also contains our domestic offices all across the United States, industry analysis, which is the unit I'm in, which is sectorally focused, and then the enforcement and compliance division, which focuses on enforcing our trade laws. Now, ITA is a global network with a global footprint, and one of the things that I wanted to mention also today is to highlight that it's not just a DC-based organization. So we do have some people here from ITA that I wanted to recognize. One of them is Paul Bergman, who's the director of our office in Denver. And there's Paul just walked in. Paul Bergman, our director here in Denver, in this area. And here in front of me is Selena Marcus, who also works here in the Denver office, and she is focused specifically, among other things, on the healthcare industry and agribusiness. And lastly, I'm so happy to recognize Juan Catrol, who's here all the way from Santiago, Chile. And Juan and I worked together on a number of projects, particularly on pensions issues So my immediate team, which is the finance and insurance industry, so we're engaged really in policy promotion and analysis work at the intersection of financial services and international trade. And that includes such as increasing access to trade finance, expanding financial services exports, and really trying to facilitate the growth and development of new and inclusive segments of finance. And in many ways, our whole organization is on the front line trying to help businesses succeed. So, why did we get involved in the issue of blockchain technology? Well, it's really a few reasons. About a year and a half ago, we had already had a financial technology initiative where we were trying to help U.S. fintechs go global. And from that issue, we gravitated into blockchain technology for some of the obvious connections. We also had a request about 18 months ago from our chief information officer in the department to get a briefing on blockchain technology, and it wasn't clear who they should come to. So that was another reason that we decided that we needed to ramp up our knowledge and expertise on the topic. But the third reason, which is really more programmatic, was there was a real opportunity for more small and medium-sized businesses to get engaged in international trade with the adoption of DLT and blockchain solutions. And that was also a very important factor and really core to our mission in terms of getting more businesses involved in trade. And, it also sort of quickly became clear once we started to get into this that blockchain technology can define a future, really governed by how effectively we manage information, data, transactions, and all that is central to the future of innovation. And our core work really on blockchain is understanding the impact on international trade and business competitiveness. And international trade these days is certainly front and center on the global landscape. Trade's moving markets again. There's a lot of focus, certainly in DC, on trade issues. And there are just so many ways where the adoption of DLT can help smooth, make more efficient, reduce transaction costs, and allow more companies, SMEs, and others to seamlessly get involved in the world of international trade. So for us, that was a no-brainer. We're also living in a world, and I heard this McKinsey stat, every minute in the United States, 80 terabytes of data move in and out of the U.S. That's every minute. And that's the equivalent of 8 libraries of Congress going in and out of the United States every day. So we are living in a little bit of a different world. And what we're trying to do is identify, among other things, a convergence of where permission and permissionless blockchains can come together and what that can mean for the creation of value. And what we're also trying to do is really learn and catalyze what's going on globally in the blockchain, what governments are doing in terms of legal, regulatory environments. So there's over 200 today government initiatives around the world on blockchain technology. Over 200. Most of them in the East Asia, the Americas, and Europe. And, Frank and I both were at the OECD, the Organization for Economic Development and Cooperation Summit in Paris, Blockchain Summit a couple weeks ago. And one of the things when we were there that we heard were all of these different perspectives from different governments, businesses, academia. And it was really a fascinating couple days. It opened with the finance minister of France, Bruno Le Maire, making international news on, does anybody want to guess what topic? Libra, correct. So what did he say? He said that France would never authorize Libra. He said it was a threat to European nation states. And then the next day, Germany came out with the exact same statement. Well, he said something else. But this didn't get any media coverage, of course, because everything got sucked up by Libra. But he also said that if for smart contracts, the sector that he believes and his ministry believes has the most effective use case is the insurance sector. And, we spend a lot of time sort of in my group on insurance issues. And I did think that was noteworthy and interesting, and there are some really good use cases in the insurance sector. So ITA is certainly not the only federal agency to be focused at all on blockchain technology. There are many others. The Department of Homeland Security, specifically Customs and Border Patrol, Department of State, within our department, the Commerce Department, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. They have an initiative related to DLT and smart manufacturing. So there are many other agencies involved in this issue. Is it a coordinated 100% approach at the federal level? No, at least not yet. But there is a lot of thinking, and in the case of DHS, there's a significant Customs and Border Patrol significant pilot project on the movement of goods using blockchain technology between the U.S. and Mexico, Canada, and Central American countries. All right, so one of the reasons Frank and I are here together today is that we have the International Trade Administration, BurstIQ, have a strategic partnership. Now, what is a strategic partnership? So, basically, it's an agreement that allows the International Trade Administration to collaborate with a business or a nonprofit or an educational institution, and that help U.S. organizations succeed globally. And these partnerships can result in helping ITA's marketing channels, industry expertise, certainly the case in this one, logistical capabilities, resources, and these partnerships can also help U.S. companies compete in international markets. Ours with BurstIQ has been focused on really expanding ITA's strategic insights on the applications of blockchain technology, how it's really utilized in the business community, and really help us to respond now with real-time policy initiatives to help the U.S. be the global leader on this issue. And, to work with a company like BurstIQ that has, a HIPAA-compliant blockchain solution for the healthcare industry is a real opportunity for us. And, Frank Amber and the entire team have been great to work with. And we also have a strategic partnership with Georgetown University, their School of Business, that covers innovative finance, blockchain technology, trade finance, impact investing, and a couple other segments of financial services. And there's a lot of excitement within their business school on this topic, and we're actually planning an event in DC on the 24th of October with Georgetown and also a group who was mentioned earlier, the Chamber of Digital Commerce. So why don't at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Frank for a few comments, and then I think we're going to have a little discussion up here.
You know, if we call it, we're going to put the chairs up, or you want to stand there?
We just pull
A little more fireside chat for you. You know, I find our relationship really has spanned almost 2 years. Well before the strategic partnership. And the one thing I want to point out is really was Paul's outreach, and this relationship has been very instrumental for us to elevate the visibility of Burst in the broader community. And I think it was one of our associates heard you speak at the EU Parliament on the blockchain sessions and approached you, and then that kind of kicked off a set of conversations as you were looking for things that were really working in industry. And at the time, we were actually working with a pension fund, I think this was brought up. So it's a long track, and it's been very enjoyable on our side as well. It's not always enjoyable to work with government. In this case, it's been really, really fun. So I know you have, and you mentioned some points in your talk, but I know you have a pretty significant initiative coming up that I believe the audience would be very interested in regarding a request for information. Could you tell us a little bit about that and what the purpose of that's going to be?
So one of the things that we're trying to do as we develop our program on blockchain technology and international trade is have a very inclusive process where we hear from the widest variety of stakeholders possible, getting their input on what sort of programs and policies we should be pursuing and what maybe we shouldn't be pursuing. So one of the simplest ways for us to do to get a wide range of input is to do what we call a request for information. So that goes out through a Federal Register notice, which we solicit comments from really everybody. And what we're going to ask for regarding through this request for information is recommendations on how, one, is blockchain technology impacting your business? Two, what sort of policies on the trade front should the United States be pursuing, discussing with other governments? Because that's going to be an important part of all this in the end, is dialogue with foreign governments. And also, what sort of incentives or policies should we be implementing to support the competitiveness of U.S. business related to this issue? We also
Drop the mic.
I think this will work. So the other thing we're going to look at is terminology, because one of the issues that we're seeing is in this space is there's a lot of terminology, and sometimes that leads to confusion. And maybe the terms are right, but I think we've heard enough that we might want to get some input on whether we're using the right terms. And that would be for a number of issues, whether it's interoperability, which we heard about earlier, the issue of smart contracts. And so I did want to mention terminology, and I did want to also mention one other point. In terms of trade agreements, one of the issues that we're going to be very keen to get information on is how do you negotiate, how do you include language that would incentivize or at least not disincentivize smart contract implementation within a bilateral or multilateral trade agreement? We will probably have a very specific question in this RFI on this topic. We know a number of companies are already looking into this, but that would be something that would help us immensely as we try to develop really a trade policy agenda that takes the new reality of the DLT world into account.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask you about that, because I think some of the recent agreements you started putting in some frameworks that would facilitate that as they matured over time. Is that a fair statement?
Well, so we've got a pending trade agreement now. It's called the U.S. Canada-Mexico agreement. We all at ITA, Paul, Celine, we're very familiar with this. And the agreement's been negotiated. It's now, awaiting congressional approval. We certainly hope that it is approved. And what's important related to this issue is that, so there's language in a chapter on digital trade and in financial services that prohibits data localization. That's a challenge that we continue to face, trying to do business around the world where countries are instituting very strict sort of data localization requirements. So we do think that would help get to where we could have language related to smart contracts in a future agreement, but we're not there yet. And other countries are thinking about this. As I mentioned, companies are also thinking about this, but we want to get to the point where we have, where we can develop real language that we can, include in future agreements. So that's what we're trying to get at.
And just to tag on to the practical examples, I mean, it's very, very relevant in the health space when you talk about data localization and some of the regulatory rules you have to work with within certain data zones around the world, that you can't take data of their citizens outside the boundaries. In addition, kind of we see it as a limitation to extending some innovations to emerging work around health access and equity, and particularly in some of the clinical trials where this data blocker becomes a barrier to really kind of ushering in some much needed health services in the area. So we applaud you for that. I think data is a very valuable commodity, and I think it should be treated as such. So thank you for doing that. I'm going to shift gears just one second. I know you mentioned the French financial minister, and particularly all this. I mean, there's been a lot of regulatory issues and discussions, particularly from the SEC on is a security or not a security token offering. But how do you see this thing? How do you see the notion of tokens and digital currencies impacting things like supply chain and potentially international trade as impact on national sovereignty as an example?
Well, I mean, a couple things. I mean, I think Minister Lemaire's comments were a little hyperbolic about Libra. I do know there are major concerns about, how this would work within the U.S. government. There's definitely conversations going on with financial regulators about how Libra would actually work. And, I read somewhere last week that they've now upped the amount of the U.S. dollar component to the basket of currencies to 50%. If I'm looking at this from outside of the U.S., Libra to me would look like a U.S. stable coin. 50% is going to be tied to the U.S. dollar. I also heard a couple of the businesses who had signed on are now having second thoughts. There was a Wall Street Journal article about this yesterday or the day before. I think this is going to be a long road, and it's going to play out. We'll see what the Swiss financial regulator, FINMA, because they actually have this in their inbox in terms of making a decision on whether Libra gets a license or not. But to your larger point, I think there are tremendous opportunities in the supply chain, insurance, the three areas that we really are looking at in my team insurance, supply chains, and trade finance. And in each of those, blockchain technology, not only in the pilot phase, but also now in the implementation phase, is having some real tangible results and impact. Trade finance for us is extremely important. There's at least 8 consortia that are working on various projects related to trade finance access. And that's really important to our mission because we need more companies involved in international trade. And, there was a stat put up there earlier, I think from James, who spoke the session before us, about the trade finance gap of $1.5 trillion. And what that 1.5 trillion represents is more demand than there is supply for trade finance, particularly for small and medium-sized enterprises. And this is a very respected Asian Development Bank study. They do this every year, and the problem's getting worse. So here we have an opportunity with implementation of a DLT or blockchain solution, which maybe can help streamline that process, can help get some of the paper out of the process, and reduce some of this onerous, really an onerous process for a small business to get involved in international trade. So that's what we want to try to get.
I mean, just to add to that, I think technology such as this, we talked about these ecosystems that develop. I mean, you represent the U.S. economy, both companies operated domestically and internationally. So it's not just one industry, it's everybody. And this kind of technology can be a really great equalizer to let smalls act a little bigger, particularly when we're acting in community with the support of commerce. So I think that's an awesome thing. I'm just going to re-echo that. We have a chance to disrupt some of the old oligarchy here and usher in a new wave of innovation, which I think is at the core of it is really the focus of what you're driving towards with the blockchain initiative within commerce. How do you foster that? How do you foster that international?
Yeah, and I think the international piece of this is very important because you're going to have a national programs, objectives, but in the end, you're going to need that collaboration and understanding of different countries around the world on a topic like this, which is essentially a borderless vehicle. I have been encouraged by a couple things. The World Trade Organization is going to have their first meeting on this topic in December on blockchain technology and trade. I will be attending that meeting. I'm looking forward to it because I think that's one of the organizations that needs to be engaged globally. Now, James also had a slide with some of the organizations that are international, like the ISO. They're certainly engaged, as well as several others. But I think now what you're going to see is the WTO also because of the trade component. But all of these organizations are going to have to talk to each other to avoid some sort of balkanized approach, in the future. And I think that's probably one of the challenges we're looking at.
So, I'm going to throw one last thing out there, then I'd like you to answer one question right after this. So, what I've seen as a small company participating, like in the OECD Blockchain Roundtable, and even that, and then the 2 conferences the last couple of years. If we wind back 2 years, I mean, a lot of the regulatory environment, and you were going against the grain early on, but they were saying, talk to the hand, we're not letting any of this happen. But I think it's fair to say that this last policy roundtable, it was quite the opposite. We saw policymakers really kind of leading the discussion versus you know, those emerging from the crypto community on more of an adoption conversation. Did you see the same?
Well, I would say there is a difference between the financial regulatory issues around crypto and how tokens are treated. We heard from the SEC earlier today, who gave us some pretty good context on where they are and some of those challenges. But the enterprise blockchain side, and that really gets to, the issues like trade, legal and regulatory standards, and ultimately, probably the most important issue, identity. Those four issues, we can, I think, to some degree now separate from the really important, crucial financial regulatory side, and then start developing policy programs and initiatives that can help, you, U.S. companies, U.S. business, better not only survive in this environment, but thrive.
I know we only have a half hour, we're kind of running up to it, so I wanted to just do a couple of quick closings, and we'll stand aside for any questions unless there's some, really something. What do you got?
What do you say of position the Federal Reserve in this blockchain economy?
That's an excellent point. Now, the Federal Reserve, of course, is going to be much more, they're a financial regulator. And, they do have a working group. They do have, some of their top people looking at the issue of cryptos and the implications. I can tell you that other central banks, not the U.S., but other central banks are looking very closely at the issue of central bank digital currencies. There's a lot of media. In fact, at the summit that Frank and I were at in Paris, there were huge sessions on this topic. And so this is an area that's getting a lot of attention from the central banks. But there's also, I think we need to, the regulators really need to think this through, because, what would be the role of a bank if central banks are issuing their own digital currencies? There could be some disruption there that maybe wouldn't be good. So anyway, great question.
So a couple things to wrap it up. One, we do, as Paul mentioned, we have our local representatives from Commerce. They're available to help us as companies, particularly in our outreach. So feel free to come grab these guys, make sure you get their business cards. The second thing, I'm going to ask John for a commitment that when the announcement comes out on the RFP, get it out to this district list.
Yes.
And then everybody in this room, please go respond to the RFP, even if they only respond to 1 or 2 questions. I think the more information, the better, and it's a way for our voice to be heard in terms of how policy is formed, particularly internationally.
And let me just say, I know we're on the RFI, we're looking forward to working with Frank also and his team. As these public comments come in, they'll be posted. Everybody can see them, it's 100% transparency, and we look forward to getting their thoughts on all of this over the upcoming months.
So I know we're a couple of minutes over, but I think just a couple of quick closing statements. I got to do a little plug for the company. Please excuse me. So, BurstIQ started in 2015 with the general premise that data, particularly health data, is the most valuable data on the planet. Everybody wants it. Our companies formed every day to generate more, in particular around precision medicine. Researchers have an insatiable appetite. We believe that a lot of the next round of breakthroughs come from bench research or data research. But yet, we as individuals don't have access to it. A lot of times can't understand it, let alone control where it is. And we're starting to see a lot of regulatory issues, even on the consumer side of life with GDPR, that we're going to be experiencing here. There's a broad reach internationally, those regulations impacting companies here in the U.S. So we set out to really solve that. Where data truly is currency driving a health economy into an access-oriented economy. So what do we do at BurstIQ? Very simply, we created a platform that supports the management and creation of immutable health profiles and identities for people, places, and things, and facilitates the transactions and interactions between them. That's a simple way to say it. You know, we are an enterprise enablement platform and have lots of great customers. I think Justin from Empiric Health is here. If you saw some recent press, these guys are awesome. They use our tech, but it's really their brains that are taking 20-25% of the costs associated with surgical operations, workflow out of large hospital systems. It's an amazing application. We have a series of other ones, including some HIE applications, some biotech pharma, some research. So it's been a really fun journey. Our team's sitting over there. We're on some other panels. Go find them. We'd love to talk to you. And with that, I'm going to give Paul the last word, please, in terms of anything you'd like from a concluding statement.
The only thing I will say, just one little anecdote. So a couple months ago, I had one of the staff people at ITA came up to me and said that he was leaving the department. And it was a guy I didn't directly supervise, but I'd worked with him some. And I said, well, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm taking a job as the blockchain policy director at a trade association. And that was the reason I raised that is because it's the first time any ITA official has taken a job that was specifically related to blockchain technology. And I think what it means, and if I come back here next year, I'll bet you $1, there'll probably be other officials who end up taking these type of positions because it's more and more trade associations, businesses, and others are going to need people with expertise on this topic. So I'll leave you with that, and I look forward to answering any questions.
Yeah, so please join me in thanking Paul for playing all the way up.